Then just Emma. The laughter started soft like wind through corn, then built to something uglier. Her fingernails bit crescents into her palms. She kept her face smooth as fresh churned butter standing there on that platform while the whole town of Millerton laughed at the woman nobody wanted. That's when she heard it. Boots on wood, steady and unhurried as a heartbeat. The crowd went silent as death. Through that corridor of shocked faces came a man Emma had never seen before. He looked at her bleeding palms, then met her eyes. "This one," he said loud enough for the whole town to hear. "We're going. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, from that September afternoon in 1882 when I learned something about the difference between being chosen and being truly seen. You know, I've been watching people make choices for the better part of 70 years now. And I can tell you this, the moments that truly matter don't announce themselves with fanfare. They creep up quiet like on an ordinary Tuesday, maybe when the sun's beating down and you're just trying to get through another day. That September afternoon in 1882, standing on the depot platform in Millerton, Texas, I learned something about the difference between being chosen and being truly seen. The good Lord works in mysterious ways, they say. And I reckon that's true. But sometimes his mysteries look an awful lot like two broken people finding each other when the whole world's turned its back. This here's the story of Emma Grace Miller and Caleb James Stone, and how being the last one nobody wanted turned out to be the first day of everything that mattered. The noon sun hammered down on the wooden platform like it held a personal grudge against every soul gathered at the Millerton depot. Emma pressed her tongue against the roof of her mouth, trying to work up enough spit to swallow. The tin water dipper had made 2 passes among the 10 women, but she'd refused both times. Let the others drink first. She'd learned that much about survival. Never show need when wolves are watching. "Ladies, gentlemen," Mr. Chester Harwick's voice boomed across the crowd like he was selling Dr. Mitchell's miracle tonic at the county fair. "Fine women here, everyone trained in the domestic arts." The crowd pressed closer. Emma could smell their sweat mixed with tobacco, their Sunday perfume already soured in the heat. Women in calico dresses whispered behind gloved hands. Men spat tobacco juice and made jokes just loud enough for her to hear. Miss Catherine from Pennsylvania Harwick continued adjusting his spectacles against the glare. "She can read, write, and cipher." A rancher with silver threading through his temples stepped forward, helped Catherine down from the platform. The blonde girl smiled prettily, her relief visible as morning dew. 1 down, 9 to go. Emma kept her eyes fixed on the flat horizon where the railroad tracks disappeared into heat shimmer. She could feel the crowd's attention sliding over her like oil on water, never quite sticking. The woman beside her, Mrs. Garrett, from Missouri widow with 2 boys, shifted her weight from foot to foot. "Heard about you?" Mrs. Garrett whispered, not unkindly, but not friendly either. "The one that got sent back. Can't have children." The words hung between them like wash on a line. Emma didn't flinch. She'd heard worse, been called worse by her own kin no less, when Thomas Ward had returned her like a broken plow after 3 years of marriage. Miss Dorothy Harwick announced, "Accomplished seamstress. Can make a man's shirt from pattern to final button." Another rancher claimed his prize. 8 women left. The platform felt bigger now, the spaces between bodies growing like accusation. Emma noticed how the claimed women looked back with that mixture of pity and relief. There but for the grace of God. Mrs. Garrett, widowed but proven fertile, 2 healthy boys. The woman beside her practically flew off the platform into the arms of a German farmer who looked steady as good timber. 7 left. The spaces widened. Emma could feel herself becoming more visible with each selection, like watching dawn creep across the prairie when you'd rather stay hidden in darkness. The younger girls went fast. Sarah to the banker's son, Louise to the telegraph operator, Mary Elizabeth to someone's cousin from Austin. 4 left. 3, 2, then just Emma. The laughter started soft like wind through corn, then built to something uglier. Mr. Harwick's face had gone red as a ripe tomato, his papers rustling as he searched for something, anything to say about her that might salvage this disaster. "Now Miss Miller here," he stammered. "She's experienced in household management." The laughter swelled. Someone shouted from the crowd. "Experienced, all right. Just can't close the deal." Her fingernails bit crescents into her palms, but she kept her face smooth as fresh churned butter. She'd practiced this in the mirror at Mrs. Donnelly's boarding house. How to look through people instead of at them. How to stand like shame wasn't eating her from the inside out. Her knees wanted to buckle, her throat closed tight as a new boot. She thought about the narrow room at the boarding house she'd have to return to. The knowing looks from the other boarders. The whispers that would follow her to whatever town she tried next. That's when she heard it. Boots on wood, steady and unhurried as a heartbeat. The laughter stuttered, then stopped altogether like someone had turned off a spigot. The crowd parted like the Red Sea in Exodus, and through that corridor of suddenly silent faces came a man Emma had never seen before. He stood tall in that way that comes from working cattle, not from trying to be imposing. His clothes were clean but worn thin at the elbows, his face weathered by sun, and something deeper that lived behind his eyes. A Winchester rifle rested easy against his shoulder, and a Colt revolver sat at his hip, both tools of the trade worn with the casual familiarity of a man who knew their weight. He stopped at the base of the platform, but instead of looking at her face like the others had, searching for what was wrong with her, his eyes went to her hands. She realized she'd unclenched them, and tiny drops of blood marked where her nails had broken skin. "Mr. Stone." Harwick mopped his face with a yellowed handkerchief. "I wasn't aware you were looking for," wasn't the man said. His voice was rough as burlap. "Changed my mind just now." He looked up, then met her eyes directly. Not with pity, not with the calculating look of a man buying cattle, just looking like he was seeing something everyone else had missed. This one he said loud enough for the whole town to hear. "We're going." The silence that followed was complete as church prayer. Emma felt the platform sway under her feet, though she knew it was solid pine. Her mouth opened, but no words came. "What did you say when someone pulled you from the fire just as the flames started licking your skirts, Mr. Stone?" Harwick tried again, shuffling his papers nervously. "I feel obligated to inform you of certain circumstances regarding Miss Miller's previous—" "Don't need to know." The man had already turned away, broad shoulders cutting through the crowd like a prow through water. "She coming or not?" It took Emma 3 tries to make her voice work. "I'm coming." She grabbed her carpetbag light as hope and heavy as failure and followed. The townspeople pulled back like she might be contagious, their faces twisted with confusion and something else. Disappointment, maybe, that the show hadn't ended the way they'd expected. "That's Caleb Stone," someone whispered, "taking on another man's leavings." "Fool's errand," another replied. But Emma kept walking, following those steady shoulders through the crowd. Her legs shook with each step, but she didn't stumble, didn't look back. The platform and its humiliation fell away behind her, and ahead lay, she didn't know what, couldn't imagine. But it had to be better than standing alone while the world laughed. The memory hit her as she climbed into the wagon. 3 years ago, standing in Thomas Ward's parlor, watching his face change when the doctor from Fort Worth spoke those words. "I'm afraid Mrs. Ward is unable to conceive. The condition appears to be permanent." Thomas's hand had tightened on her arm. Painful, bruising. "And you're certain the doctor had nodded already, packing his black bag, already retreating from the scene he'd created?" "I've examined dozens of women with similar presentations. I'm quite certain." That night Thomas hadn't spoken to her at all, just sat at the kitchen table drinking corn whiskey until his eyes went glassy. The next morning he'd loaded her things into a wagon and driven her back to her father's house without a word. Her father had been reading the newspaper on the porch. He'd looked up once, seen her standing there with her bags, and looked back down. Not a word, not a question. Her mother had come to the door, pressed traveling money into Emma's palm. "Emma Ruth," she'd whispered. "I'm sorry." Then she'd closed the door, soft but final. Emma blinked hard, bringing herself back to the present. The wagon rocked beneath her as Mr. Stone climbed up beside her, took the reins. The mules knew their master leaned into the traces without command. They rolled forward, leaving the depot and its crowd behind. The silence between them was different from the silence on the platform. That had been the quiet before execution. This was something else. She didn't know yet what to call it, but she could breathe in it. As they passed the last buildings of town, she finally spoke. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. The mule's hooves kicked up dust that coated everything in fine powder. The leather traces creaked. A hawk circled overhead riding thermals in the endless blue. "You didn't beg," he said finally. Still didn't look at her. That was all. But somehow it was enough. The miles rolled past beneath them. Emma watched the landscape change from the compact buildings of Millerton to the endless stretch of prairie. Grass the color of old gold rippled in waves under the wind. Here and there patches of scrub oak broke the monotony, their leaves already touched with the gold and red that promised autumn. "Mr. Stone," she said, "there's things you should know about why I was available. Don't need to know." The firmness in his voice should have been insulting, but there was something else there too, not indifference, more like he'd already decided, and whatever her past held didn't matter to the choice he'd made. "But surely you should—" She tried again. "Can you cook?" The question caught her sideways. "Yes." "Wash clothes?" "Yes." "Know which end of a chicken lays eggs?" Despite everything, despite the humiliation still raw on her skin, her mouth twitched. The back end, generally. He made a sound that might have been amusement. "Then we're good." They passed the last house on the town's edge, the Widow Morrison's place with its sagging fence and yellow roses gone wild. Emma had walked past it every day from the boarding house wondering if she'd end up like that. Alone and forgotten, except for pity. "Your carpetbag's light," he observed. "Don't own much." "Good. Don't have much either." The honesty of it settled something in her chest. No pretense here. No promises of better than what was. Just two people with nothing starting from there. The ranch she started then stopped. "What did you ask? What kind of house? How many cattle would there be? Other people or just them in the emptiness?" 8 miles out, he said. "Maybe 9. 160 acres, most of it scrub. House has 4 rooms and a lean-to." He shifted the reins to one hand, pulled out a kerchief to wipe dust from his face. "You'll want the lean-to. The lean-to, built it last month. Has its own door. Lock on the inside." Emma turned to study his profile. Weathered as old leather. Focused on the road ahead. A muscle jumped in his jaw like he was grinding words between his teeth. "You built me a room before you knew I existed." Built someone a room. He paused. Figured whoever answered that advertisement would want space of their own. So he'd been one of those men who rode away for a bride like ordering from the Sears catalog, only he hadn't even come to look at the selection until today. "You weren't at the depot to meet us. Wasn't planning on it." What changed? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. The wagon hit a deeper rut, and she bounced hard, catching herself against his shoulder. He was solid as a fence post, warm through the cotton shirt. She pulled back quick, but not before she smelled him. Lye soap and leather and something like cedar. "Saw the crowd gathering like carrion birds," he said finally. "Went to see what the fuss was about. And found her. The last one. The rejected one. The one nobody wanted." "I work hard," she said, needing to say something true. "Don't complain. Don't expect much." "Good. Neither do I." "Stream up ahead," he said after another mile. "Stop to water the mules." She could see it now, a line of green cutting through the brown landscape. Cottonwoods marking water like a promise. As they got closer she saw something else too. A rider waiting in the shade hat pulled low. Mr. Stone's shoulders went tight. His hand moved to the rifle propped against his knee, though he didn't lift it. "That's Harwick," he said, and the way he said it made Emma's stomach drop. Must have taken the cut through. The bride agent sat his horse with the patience of a man holding winning cards, papers rolled in his hand like a weapon he hadn't decided whether to use yet. Mr. Stone pulled the mules to a stop 20 feet from where Harwick waited. The bride agent's horse stamped and blew eager for the water just beyond, but Harwick held him firm, those rolled papers tap-tap-tapping against his thigh. "Mr. Stone." Harwick touched his hat brim. "Miss Miller." It's done, Harwick. Stone's voice carried no more emotion than if he was discussing fence posts. You got your fee. We got our business. Nothing left to say. Now that's where you're wrong. Harwick shifted in his saddle, leather creaking. See, I got obligations, legal ones. When a woman's been previously married and returned, there's documents need signing, waivers, protections for you, Mr. Stone. Emma's stomach clenched. Here it came. The details. The humiliation served up fresh for this stranger to digest. Don't need protecting. Stone clicked his tongue at the mules, started them walking forward. Harwick nudged his horse sideways, blocking the path to water. You need to know what you're taking on. This woman is sitting right here. The words jumped out of Emma before she could stop them. Both men turned to look at her. She straightened her spine, met Harwick's eyes directly. Whatever you think needs saying, Mr. Harwick, say it plain. Harwick's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Mrs. Miller. Miss Miller, she corrected. The divorce was final. Thomas wanted that clear as spring water. Miss Miller. Harwick's voice took on the oily tone of false concern. Then I'm only trying to protect Mr. Stone's interests. He should know about your condition. The word hung in the air like smoke from a distant fire. Emma felt Stone go still beside her. Not tense exactly. More like a man listening for thunder after a lightning strike. 3 years married. Harwick continued warming to his subject. No children. Husband testified to normal marital relations. Doctor in Fort Worth confirmed no obvious impediment on his side. Makes a man wonder why you're still talking. Stone's interruption came soft, which somehow made it worse. Move your horse. I'm trying to help you, Stone. You don't know what you're... I know you're keeping my mules from water. Know you're speaking on things that ain't your business. Know if you don't move that horse in the next 10 seconds, I'll move it for you. Harwick's face went red, then white. His horse danced sideways, sensing the tension. I'm trying to do right by you, Stone. That woman can't have children. Documented. You take her on, you're taking on a lifetime of empty. Empty house, empty nursery, empty... Stone was off the wagon before Emma could blink. He didn't run, didn't hurry. Just stepped down and walked toward Harwick with the inevitability of sunset. Harwick's horse shied back, and the agent had to fight to control him. Empty, Stone repeated like he was tasting the word. You want to talk about empty? He stopped beside Harwick's horse, one hand on the bridle. His voice went quiet. Dangerous quiet. My house is already empty. Got 3 years of empty. Got a grave with 2 stones side by side. You think this woman's going to make that worse? Harwick swallowed hard enough that Emma could see his throat work from where she sat. I just thought... No, you didn't think. Stone released the bridle, stepped back. You wanted your show, wanted your drama. Well, you got it back at the depot. Now get. For a heartbeat, Harwick looked like he might argue. Then he wheeled his horse around and spurred harder than necessary. The animal leaped forward, kicking up dust that settled over everything like judgment. Stone stood there watching until horse and rider disappeared over a rise. Then he walked back to the wagon, slow and steady, and climbed up beside her. Sorry about that, he said, taking up the reins again. You didn't have to. Yeah, I did. He guided the mules down to the stream. They waded in up to their knees, drinking deep, while the water ran clear and cold around them. Stone set the brake, climbed down, again went to check their hooves. Emma watched him run his hands down each leg, checking for stones or cuts with the kind of patience that couldn't be faked. You should know, she said to his back. What he said was true. About me being barren. About there being no children. He straightened up, water dripping from his hands. You should know that my wife died trying to give me one. Baby died too. Took the most of a day to die while I sat there useless as tits on a boar. He wiped his hands on his pants. So if you're worried I'm looking for a broodmare, you can stop. The words should have been harsh, but they came out tired, like facts worn smooth from handling. Then why, Emma asked, why take a wife at all? He looked at her then, really looked. His eyes were the color of winter grass, gray-green and distant. Ranch, don't run itself. Need another pair of hands. Someone who can do what needs doing without expecting much in return. He paused. That's all. Emma nodded slowly. It was honest, at least. More honest than Thomas had ever been with his promises of love eternal, right up until the doctor said the word that changed everything. I can do that, she said. Work for my keep. Good. He went back to checking the mules. There's more, though. Things you should know before we get there. Emma waited while he finished with the animals, then watched him pull the canteen from under the seat. He took a drink, offered it to her. The water was warm and tasted of metal, but she drank anyway. I don't talk much, he said. Don't go to town socials. Don't have people over except when business requires. Don't expect that to change. Suits me fine. I get up before dawn, work till past dark. Expect the same. I'm not afraid of work. The house is rough, functional but not pretty. Don't have money for pretty. Pretty never did me any favors anyway. That got something almost like a smile. Just a twitch at the corner of his mouth, but it changed his whole face for a second. Made him look younger, less like a man carved from oak and rawhide. One more thing. He took the canteen back, capped it carefully. That lean-to room, it's yours, your space. I won't come in uninvited, won't expect you in mine. We'll share the kitchen and common areas, share the work. But that's all we're sharing. He met her eyes directly. Understood. The relief hit her so hard she had to grip the wagon seat. Thomas had taken what he called his marital rights every night for 3 years until the doctor said there was no point. Even after that, when corn liquor made him mean, he'd still understood. She managed. They pulled out of the stream water running off the wheels in silver streams. The sun had passed its peak, throwing their shadow alongside like a companion. Emma settled back on the hard bench, feeling something she hadn't felt in so long she'd forgotten its name. Not hope exactly, not peace, but maybe the space where those things could grow if given time and quiet and room. The miles rolled on. The landscape flattened, stretched. Emma's muscles began to ache from the wagon's constant jostling. Her mouth went dry again despite the water. The sun beat down relentless, and she understood why the townspeople had whispered about this land-breaking people. 4 more miles, Stone said. Maybe 5. Then she saw it, rising from a small swell in the land. A house of rough lumber and cedar posts looking like it had grown from the land rather than been built on it. A barn stood off to one side, corral attached. No garden, no flowers, no woman's touch anywhere, but solid. Everything about it said solid. Stone pulled up at the front door, jumped down, reached for her carpet bag. Come on, I'll show you what's what. The house smelled of bacon grease and dust. 4 rooms as promised. Kitchen that served as main room, 2 bedrooms, and a small parlor that looked like it hadn't seen use since creation. Everything functional, everything bare. Stove works good, he said, moving through the space fast, pointing things out. But the damper sticks. Pumps at the kitchen sink. Water's good. Comes from a spring. Root cellars through that door. Smokehouse out back. He pushed open a door at the back of the kitchen. The lean-to room was narrow but private, with its own door to outside like he'd said. A simple iron bed with corn shuck mattress. A washstand. Hooks for clothes. A small window with flour sack curtains. Locks there. He pointed to the bolt on the inside of both doors. Nobody bothers you here. Emma set her carpet bag on the bed. The room smelled of new lumber and emptiness, but it was hers. That bolt on the door said so. Chickens are in the coop by the barn. Stone was already backing out. Probably need feed. Grains in the barn. Marked bins. There's preserved goods in the cellar. Salt pork in the smokehouse. Make yourself at home. You're leaving now. He stopped at the kitchen door. Fire don't wait. I got to help with it, then check my own brakes. Might not be back till late. Maybe morning. But She swallowed the rest. What was she going to say? That she didn't know where anything was, that she'd never been alone on a ranch, that the thought of spending her first night in a stranger's house without even the stranger there made her chest tight. You'll be fine. He said it like fact, not encouragement. House is solid. You got food, water, shelter. Lock the doors if it makes you feel better. Then he was gone. She heard the wagon rattling away fast now, leaving her in the silence of the empty house. Through the window she could see smoke rising in the distance, not close but visible. The wind carried the faint smell of burning grass. Emma stood in the middle of the kitchen taking inventory. Cast iron stove that needed blacking. Table with 2 chairs, one worn more than the other. Shelves with a few dishes, none matching. A coffee pot on the stove with grounds from morning still in it. She walked to the shelves, ran her finger through the dust. A line of clean wood showed beneath. On the table, circles from coffee cups. By the stove, grease spots on the wall from bachelor cooking. The place needed work, needed care, needed someone to make it more than just shelter. She found herself moving, unpacking her few things in the lean-to. Dresses, underclothes, her mother's Bible that she hadn't opened in months, a hairbrush, the bar of yellow soap she'd been saving. Then back to the kitchen, tying her apron, claiming the space the only way she knew how. Water from the pump ran rusty at first, then clear. She found lye soap and rags started with the table. The wood was good underneath the grime pine boards that would gleam with enough work. The coffee pot got scoured, the old grounds thrown out the back door. In the root cellar she found treasures. Potatoes gone soft but not rotten. Onions. A jar of preserved peaches that looked like sunset in glass. The smokehouse had salt pork as promised, along with a ham that might be good if the inside wasn't turned. The chickens complained when she entered their coop. 5 hens and a rooster with ideas above his station. She found eggs, 4 of them warm in the straw. The grain bin in the barn was marked clear as promised. Everything Stone did seemed to be clear, ordered, without decoration. Back in the kitchen she built up the fire in the stove. The damper did stick, but she figured out if you lifted and twisted at the same time it gave. Soon she had water-heating beans soaking for tomorrow and a decision to make about supper. Would he expect a meal when he returned? Would he think her presumptuous if she cooked, or lazy if she didn't? She made cornbread because she had the makings. Fried the salt pork until it was crispy, set it aside. Found wild onions growing by the back door, added them to the pork drippings. Cut up potatoes to fry. It wasn't fancy, but it would fill a man's stomach after fighting fire. The sun was setting, painting everything the color of the smoke when she heard horses. Not one, several. She went to the window, saw shapes moving in the dusk. Men's voices, but she couldn't make out words. Then footsteps on the porch, the door opening. Stone stood there covered in soot and ash, and behind him 3 men she didn't recognize, all equally black with smoke, all looking at her with expressions that ranged from surprise to something else, something that made her step back until her hip hit the table. Brought help, Stone said. Fire jumped the break. The biggest of the men, red beard showing through the soot, smiled in a way that showed too many teeth. "Well now, Caleb, you didn't tell us you had company." "This is my wife," Stone said. The words cut flat across the room, sharp as a fence line. "Emma." The word wife hung there like a barrier between her and them. Redbeard's smile faltered, reformed into something more careful. "Wife. Since when you got a wife, Caleb?" "Since today." Stone moved past them to the wash basin, started scrubbing the black from his hands. Fire's contained for now. Redbeard was still looking at Emma, and she didn't like the way his eyes moved over her. "Wind dies down, should hold till morning. You boys best get back to your own places." Stone dried his hands on the towel she'd hung by the basin. "Long ride in the dark. Now hold on." The second man, skinny with a farmer's tan, pushed forward. "We've been fighting that fire all day. Least you could do is offer some grub." Emma's hands found the table edge behind her. The cornbread was cooling on the stove. Salt pork and potatoes staying warm in the spider skillet. Enough for 1 man, maybe 2. Not 4. "Wife's had a long day too," Stone said. He positioned himself between her and them. Casual-like but firm. Just arrived from town. Redbeard's eyebrows went up. "The bride sale. You actually went through with that fool plan?" Stone opened the door wider, not inviting them further in, inviting them out. "Appreciate your help with the fire. Tell your brother I'll come by tomorrow. Help rebuild his break." The 3 men looked at each other. The third one, older with gray streaking his temples, cleared his throat. "Come on, boys. Man wants his wedding night. They left boots heavy on the porch, voices carrying back through the dark. She heard the red-bearded one say something about mail-order goods and another man laugh. Stone closed the door, set the bolt, then stood there with his back to her shoulders, tight as fence wire. "I made supper," Emma said into the silence. "If you're hungry." He turned around slow, taking in the cleaned kitchen, the food on the stove, the table she'd wiped down to bare wood. "You didn't have to. Had to eat myself." She moved to the stove, started filling a plate. Easier to move than to stand still under his gaze. "Sit. You look ready to fall over." He sat. She put the plate in front of him. Cornbread, pork potatoes with wild onions. Nothing special, but his eyes widened like she'd served Christmas dinner. He took a bite, closed his eyes, chewed slow. "Been 3 years since anyone cooked in this kitchen besides me. 3 years since—" He trailed off, but Emma understood. 3 years since Rose. Shows in the grease stains. That got almost a smile. He ate steady but not rushed, cleaning his plate while she fixed her own portion. They sat across from each other, the lantern between them throwing shadows on the walls. "Fire," she said. "Is it—" Turned back on itself. He reached for the cornbread, tore it in half. "Brother of the red-bearded fellow lost some grazing land, but no structures. My brakes held. Happens every summer. Grass gets dry, lightning strikes, or some fool drops a cigarette. Whole prairie goes up. Those men won't be back," he said after a moment. "They know you're here now. Word will spread by morning. Nobody will bother you." She wanted to ask what would have happened if he hadn't claimed her as wife, but she knew. Same thing that happened to untethered women everywhere. "The one with the red beard," she said. He seemed disappointed. Stone's jaw tightened. "Wade Coleman Turner. Has ideas about what he's owed for being born male and white. Best you stay clear of him. Planning on it." They finished eating. Emma collected the plates, pumped water to wash them. Stone sat at the table, exhaustion settling over him like dust. She could see it in the way his shoulders curved, the way his hands lay flat on the table like they were too heavy to lift. "You should sleep," she said. "Lot of days like this. You get used to it." He stood, joints popping. Headed for his bedroom, stopped at the door. "That lean-to. Lock it tonight. Both doors. You think they'll—" "No. But lock it anyway." She did. Both doors checked twice, then lay on the corn-shuck mattress, fully dressed, listening. The house settled around her boards, creaking as the day's heat leaked away. Wind pushed at the walls, carrying the faint smell of smoke. Through the thin wall she heard Stone moving in his room, the scrape of boots being pulled off, the groan of bed ropes as he lay down. Then nothing. Just breathing that turned steady deep. Emma stared at the ceiling, counting knots in the wood. This was her life now, this room, this house, this man who'd taken her on like hiring help. No romance, no expectations, just work and food and a bolt on the door. But it was hers, and for the first time in 3 years, nobody could take it away. The rooster woke her before dawn, crowing like Judgment Day. Emma rolled out of bed, muscles stiff from the thin mattress, and dressed in the dark. Through the window, stars still pricked the sky, but the eastern horizon showed the faintest gray. By the time she got the stove fired up, Stone was in the kitchen. He moved around her careful, like filling his coffee pot, slicing bread. They worked without talking, without bumping into each other like dancers who'd learned the steps separately but somehow knew the same rhythm. "I'll be working the home pasture today," he said finally. "Checking fence. You need anything from the barn? Get it this morning. Chickens need tending. They're your department now." He pulled on his boots. "Eggs are yours to use or sell. Same with kitchen garden if you want to plant one. Bit late in the season. Still time for greens, turnips, maybe winter squash if we don't get early frost. Would you like dinner at noon?" She'd seen him take bread for the day's work, but a man couldn't live on bread alone. She made biscuits, opened the jar of preserved peaches, fried up eggs with the leftover potatoes. Set it all on the table, then felt foolish, like a wife playing house. But he came in right at noon, washed his hands without being asked, and sat down to eat like this was established routine. "Fence is sound," he said between bites. "Lost some posts to rot on the north side. Need to replace them before winter. I can help." He looked up from his plate. "You ever set fence posts?" "No, but I can learn. Maybe." He went back to eating. "Garden plots on the south side of the house. Hasn't been worked in 3 years. Soil might be played out." 3 years since his wife died. Emma didn't comment on that, just nodded. Days fell into pattern after that. Up before dawn, coffee and bread. Stone to his work, Emma to hers. Noon dinner if he was close enough to come in. Supper as the sun set. Evenings on the porch, him whittling or mending harness her with sewing from the basket she'd found in the parlor. They didn't talk much, didn't need to. The work talked for them. Fixed fence, mended shirts, full bellies, clean clothes. A week passed, then 2. The burned prairie started showing green at the base life, pushing through the black. Emma got the garden plot turned, though her hands blistered and her back screamed. Stone noticed. Brought her leather gloves from town the next day. No comment, just left them on the table. She learned his preferences without asking. Coffee strong enough to float horseshoes. Beans with plenty of salt pork. Cornbread over biscuits. He learned hers too somehow. Always left the water bucket full when he knew she was doing wash. Fixed the squeaky board by her door without being asked. The 3rd week she was hanging laundry when she found herself humming. Some tune from childhood barely remembered. She stopped, looked around guilty. But Stone was in the far pasture. Nobody to hear, nobody to care. She went back to the washing, let the tune continue. The wet clothes snapped in the wind. The sun beat down warm, and for a moment she forgot to guard against contentment. That's when she saw the rider approaching. Not fast, like when young Ben Blackwood had come about the fire. Slow, deliberate, a woman riding side saddle, back straight as righteousness. Emma knew before the woman got close enough to see clear. Mrs. Ruth Blackwood, come to inspect the new wife, come to judge and find wanting. Mrs. Ruth Blackwood's horse picked its way across the yard like it was too good for the dirt. The woman herself sat rigid in her black riding habit despite the heat that had the horse's neck dark with sweat. Behind her, matching her pace, exactly rode a younger woman in blue calico. The daughter, probably. Come to see the circus. Emma's hands were still wet from the washing. She dried them on her apron, knowing it would leave marks, not caring. Let them see her as she was. Working woman, not parlor decoration. Mrs. Stone. Mrs. Blackwood's voice carried across the yard like she was calling hogs. I do hope we're not interrupting. The Mrs. Stone hit strange. 3 weeks wearing the name, and it still felt borrowed like a dress that didn't quite fit. Mrs. Blackwood. Emma didn't move from the laundry line, made them come to her. Miss Blackwood. The daughter may be 16 with her mother's sharp nose, but softer eyes nodded quick. Mrs. Blackwood dismounted with practiced grace, handed her reins to her daughter, and advanced across the yard like Grant taking Richmond. We simply had to come welcome you properly. She looked at the washing the suds bucket. Emma's wet apron and her smile said everything. I do apologize for not coming sooner, but one heard such conflicting reports. Reports. Oh, you know how men talk. Or perhaps you don't, being newly arrived. Mrs. Blackwood pulled off her riding gloves, one finger at a time. Wade Turner said Caleb had taken a wife. My husband insisted it couldn't be true. Caleb's been quite firm about not remarrying since dear Rose passed. Dear Rose. Like they'd been intimate friends. Emma happened to know Rose Stone had died before the Blackwoods even moved to the county. Yet here you are, Mrs. Blackwood continued. How unexpected. Would you like some water? Emma asked. Coffee. Coffee would be lovely if you have it. One never knows what provisions a bachelor establishment might lack. Emma led them to the house, aware of how they catalogued everything. The swept porch, the mended steps, the clean windows. Inside, she saw them note the scrubbed floors, the organized shelves, the absence of dust. Mrs. Blackwood's mouth tightened. She'd been hoping for squalor. How charming, she said in a tone that meant the opposite. You've done wonders with so little to work with. Emma put the coffee onto heat-set-out cups. The good ones, the ones she'd found wrapped in newspaper in the back of a shelf. No saucers, but the cups were china painted with tiny roses. These were roses. Mrs. Blackwood said immediately. I remember when she ordered them from the Sears catalog. Such refined taste she had. They're pretty, Emma agreed, not rising to the bait. She was accomplished, you know, could play piano, speak French. Her needlework won prizes at the county fair. Mama, the daughter said soft. Perhaps Mrs. Stone doesn't. Hush, Lily. Mrs. Blackwood settled into a chair like she owned it. I'm simply making conversation. I'm sure Mrs. Stone appreciates knowing about her predecessor. Don't you, dear? Emma poured the coffee steady, though her hand wanted to shake. Sugar if you have it? She did. Stone had brought a cone from town last week, left it on the table without comment. She chipped off pieces with the special pliers, set them on a plate. How delightful. Mrs. Blackwood helped herself to 3 pieces. Tell me, where exactly are you from back east? How wonderfully vague. And your people gone. Mrs. Blackwood's cup paused halfway to her mouth. All of them, enough of them. Lily shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable. She was pretty in an unfinished way, like dough that needed more time to rise. Her eyes kept darting to the door like she wanted to bolt. And how did you and Caleb meet? Mrs. Blackwood pressed on. It must have been quite the whirlwind courtship, given that no one knew he was even corresponding with anyone. Emma sipped her coffee, let the silence stretch. Outside, one of the hens was making a fuss about something. Probably the rooster getting too familiar. We met when we needed to, she said finally. How romantic. Though I suppose romance isn't always necessary, is it? Sometimes practical considerations suffice. Her eyes swept over Emma's mended dress, her work-roughened hands. I imagine you're grateful for the security. I imagine Caleb's grateful for the cooking. Lily made a sound that might have been a laugh, quickly smothered. Mrs. Blackwood's nostrils flared. Yes, well, men do appreciate their comforts. Speaking of which, you must tell me your secret for managing that kitchen garden. The soil here is so difficult. Work. I beg your pardon, the secret is work. Turn the soil, add manure, water when needed, pull weeds before they seed. Nothing fancy. How industrious. Mrs. Blackwood set down her cup with a click. You know, there's a ladies' aid society in town. We meet monthly, discuss literature, organize charity work. I could sponsor you if you'd like to join. Emma heard the trap in it. Join and be the perpetual outsider, the one they discussed when she wasn't there. The mail-order bride, the woman who couldn't have children, the one who wasn't Rose. That's kind of you, but I'm kept busy here. Of course. A ranch does require constant attention, especially one that's been neglected. She stood, pulling on her gloves. We really must be going, but first I'd love to see what you've done with the rest of the house. Rose had such plans for improvement. The house is as it needs to be. Still, I'm sure you'd want to know what she loved about this place. She cared for it so. So there it was again. Rose. 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 Like saying the name enough times would resurrect her. Lily, Emma said, ignoring Mrs. Blackwood. Would you like some eggs to take home? The hens are laying well. The girl's face lit up. Oh, could I? Of course. Emma grabbed the egg basket. Come on. She led Lily out, leaving Mrs. Blackwood standing in the kitchen. Let her snoop if she wanted. Nothing to find but clean floors and mended clothes. At the chicken coop, Lily finally relaxed. I'm sorry about Mama. She gets ideas about how things should be. Most people do. She means well. Usually. It's just she and Mrs. Stone, the first one they were planning to be great friends. Then she died before Mama could properly establish the friendship. And Mama hates unfinished things. Emma collected eggs while Lily held the basket. Were you friends with her, Rose? I only met her once. She was very beautiful, very delicate. Delicate. Everything Emma wasn't. Mr. Stone must have loved her very much, Lily continued. Mama says he nearly went mad when she died. Wouldn't let anyone help with the burial. Dug both graves himself. Both graves. Mother and baby. Emma's hand hesitated over the next nest. But he seems better now, Lily added quickly. Ben, my brother, he says. Mr. Stone's been working the ranch properly again. Even whistling sometimes. Ben says a lot for a boy. Lily blushed. He's not a boy. He's 15. Almost 16. Emma hid a smile. So that's how it was. Nearly a man then. Exactly. Lily took the full basket. Mrs. Stone, can I ask you something? Ask. Are you happy here? The question caught Emma sideways. Happy? What did that even mean? She had food shelter work and a man who left her be. Was that happiness or just the absence of misery? I'm where I need to be, she said. Lily nodded, like that made perfect sense. They walked back to find Mrs. Blackwood on the porch, lips pursed like she'd been sucking lemons. There you are. We really must go. She mounted her horse with sharp movements. Do tell Caleb we called. I'm sure he'll be interested to know. They rode off Mrs. Blackwood's back, rigid with disapproval. Lily turning once to wave. Emma stood on the porch watching dust settle in their wake. Stone would be back soon for supper. Would he be angry about the visitors? About her letting them in, serving them coffee from Rose's cups? She went inside, started to wash the dishes, then stopped. There on the table where Mrs. Blackwood had been sitting was a small leather journal worn at the edges, tied with a faded ribbon. Emma picked it up, knew immediately what it was, even before she saw the name written on the inside cover in careful script. Rose Elizabeth Stone, her book of days. Mrs. Blackwood hadn't forgotten it. She'd left it, deliberate as a slap. And now Emma held Rose's diary in her hands, feeling the weight of all those words. All those days lived by the woman who'd had everything Emma didn't. Beauty, accomplishment, fertility, and Caleb Stone's love. The smart thing would be to put it aside, give it to Stone when he came in, let him decide what to do with his dead wife's thoughts. But her fingers were already untying the ribbon, and the first page was falling open, and Rose's voice was rising from the paper like smoke. January 1st, 1879. Today Caleb smiled at me, and I knew my life was beginning. Emma's fingers trembled as she turned the page. Rose's handwriting was perfect. Each letter formed like she was teaching penmanship. January 15th, 1879. Caleb brought me roses from town today, yellow ones. He said they reminded him of my laugh. I pressed one between these pages to remember this feeling, being treasured, being seen, being loved. A dried petal fell out brittle as old skin. Emma caught it, held it to the window light. Still yellow, after 3 years dead. February 3rd, 1879. The house needs so much work, but Caleb promises we'll make it beautiful together. I've drawn plans for a parlor with real wallpaper curtains from St. Louis. He laughs at my ambitions, but I see him saving every penny. March 17th, 1879. The wind never stops. Today it blew so hard I thought the house might lift off its foundation. I miss Dallas terribly. Miss the shops, the theater, Mother's garden parties. But Caleb tries so hard to make me happy. I must try harder too. June 12th, 1879. A man named Wade Turner came by today while Caleb was working. He made me uncomfortable. The way he looked at me, the way he stood too close when showing me his horse. I mentioned it to Caleb. He was furious. Rode to Turner's place that night. Came back with bloody knuckles. Won't speak of what happened. Emma's breath caught. Wade Turner, the red-bearded man from the other night. August 5th, 1879. I'm pregnant. I can barely believe it. Caleb is overjoyed. Started planning a nursery in the lean-to before I even showed. We've picked names. Boy Caleb Jr., girl Rose. Though Caleb says he hopes for a girl with my eyes. I've never seen him so happy. I must not fail him. September 20th, 1879. The baby kicks so much at night. Caleb puts his hand on my belly and talks to the child, tells stories about the ranch they'll build together, about the life we'll have. I want to believe it all, but something feels wrong. A darkness I can't name. November 3rd, 1879. Wade Turner came by again. Caleb was at the Henderson Ranch helping with their barn. Wade said he was just checking on me, making sure I was well with the baby coming. But he grabbed my wrist when I tried to go inside, squeezed hard enough to leave marks, said, "That temper of yours could hurt the baby. You should be more careful." Then he laughed and left. I didn't tell Caleb. He'd kill Turner, and then where would we be? Emma's stomach turned. The threat was clear, even through Rose's careful words. December 10th, 1879. The baby is kicking so much. Sometimes I'm afraid. Not of the birth itself, but of after. What if I'm not enough? What if this place breaks me and the baby suffers for it? I dreamed of drowning, told Caleb. He says everything will be fine. But I see worry in his eyes now. The next page was blank except for a single line in different ink shakier hand. January 15th, 1880. Caleb hasn't written for 2 weeks. I think he forgot. Or maybe he can't bear to. Then nothing until the very last page. Emma almost closed the diary, but something made her look. The handwriting was different. Masculine, heavy strokes that pressed deep into the paper. Dated just 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks before he'd gone to the depot and found her. Rose told me to find someone stronger. Been thinking on that a lot lately. Thought she meant stronger body. Stronger at ranch work. But maybe she meant stronger different. Stronger at being alone. Stronger at accepting less. Stronger at surviving without love or hope or softness. Maybe I'm the one needs to be stronger. Strong enough to try again. Different this time. True this time. Not built on dreams but on something solid. Something that won't break when the wind blows. The front door opened. Emma slammed the diary shut, shoved it under a dish towel. Stone stood in the doorway, sweat cutting channels through the dust on his face. He saw the tracks in the yard. We have visitors, Mrs. Blackwood and her daughter. Emma busied herself at the stove, not meeting his eyes. They came to welcome me. He grunted, went to the wash basin. Water splashed. What did she want? To inspect, to judge, to make sure I knew about... She stopped. About Rose. Yes. He dried his face slow, the towel covering his expression. When he lowered it, his face was blank as fresh paper. She leaves satisfied. Left something behind. Emma pulled out the diary, set it on the table between them. Stone stared at it like it might bite. His hand reached out, pulled back, reached again, finally picked it up. Rose's diary. His thumb traced her name on the cover. Thought I'd burned everything. Mrs. Blackwood left it on purpose. Sounds like her. He opened it to that first page, read the words about smiling, about life beginning. His jaw worked. You read it. Just the first few entries before you came in. He nodded, kept turning pages. Stopped at one, read silently. His face changed, softened, then hardened again. He closed the book. I need to tell you something about her, about what happened. You don't owe me explanations. Maybe not, but you should know. He sat heavy in his chair. Rose was fragile, not just her body, her mind, her spirit. Beautiful and fragile like those teacups she ordered. Emma sat across from him, waited. She hated it here at first. The isolation, the work, the dirt that never stopped blowing. But she tried. Lord knows she tried. Painted flowers on the walls to make it prettier. Sang while she worked. Made this place feel like something more than boards and nails. His fingers drummed the table, found a rhythm, stopped. When she got pregnant, she was so happy. Started sewing little clothes. Planning a nursery in the lean-to. Picking names. Caleb Jr. for a boy. Rose for a girl. He laughed, but it sounded like breaking. I built that cradle she wanted. Spent 2 months carving flowers on the headboard. Emma remembered the lean-to room. Her room now. No sign of a nursery. No cradle. The labor started early. 2 months early. I wanted to get the doctor, but she said no. It was just false pains. By the time I realized, by the time I knew something was wrong, he stood, abrupt, went to the window. His back blocked the late afternoon light. Nearest doctor was 20 miles. Roads were mud from spring rain. Took me 5 hours to get there and back. 5 hours she labored alone except for Mrs. Henley from the next ranch. When I got back with the doctor, she was barely conscious. Baby was stuck. Had been for hours. Emma's stomach clenched. She knew this story. Every woman knew this story. Doctor did what he could. Got the baby out, but it never breathed. Never cried. And Rose, she held on another day, long enough to understand what happened, long enough to blame herself, to apologize over and over for failing. He turned from the window. I told her it wasn't her fault, told her we'd try again when she was stronger, lied right to her face while she was dying. That wasn't lying. That was kindness. Was it? He picked up the diary again. Know what her last words were. Find someone stronger. Not, I love you or remember me. Just find someone stronger. The words sat between them like stones. Emma understood now why he'd built the lean-to, why he'd come to the depot, why he'd chosen her, the woman already proven barren, already rejected. Someone who couldn't fail him the way Rose had, couldn't die trying to give him what she couldn't give. I didn't want stronger, he said quiet. I wanted nothing. Nobody. Just work and silence and no more dying on my watch. But you answered the advertisement. Sent for a bride. Ranch needs 2 people. Can't do it alone much as I tried. And the men around here, they talk. Bachelor with property becomes a target. Widows showing up with casseroles. Fathers pushing daughters at you. Easier to have a wife. Safer, safer. There it was. The word that explained everything. So you picked the one no one wanted. I picked the one who stood straight while the world laughed at her. That's different. Emma felt something shift in her chest. Not hope exactly, something quieter. Can I ask you something, she said. About Rose? He nodded. Did you love her? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then I loved who she was trying to be. This frontier woman, this rancher's wife. But that wasn't who she really was. She was a banker's daughter from Dallas who read too many romantic novels about the West. He set the diary on the table. You want to read the rest? No. You sure might answer questions. I don't have questions about Rose. I have questions about you. His eyebrows raised. That first day, Emma said. When Harwick was telling you about my situation, you already knew, didn't you? Before he said anything. Suspected. How? The way the other women avoided you. The way you held yourself separate. The way you looked like you were preparing for a blow. He met her eyes straight on. Recognized it. Same way I stood after Rose died. Waiting for the next hurt. And you picked me anyway. Because of it. Figured we'd understand each other. 2 people who'd already been broken. Nothing left to break. Emma started pulling things for supper. Beans, cornbread. Simple things that didn't require thought. You're wrong about that. About what nothing left to break. She opened the bean pot, stirred. There's always something left to break. Question is, whether it's worth the risk. She heard his chair scrape his footsteps crossing to his room. The door closed soft. When he came back, he was carrying something wrapped in brown paper. Found this in the attic when I was cleaning it out before you came. He set it on the table. Was going to burn it with the rest. Didn't know why I kept it. Emma dried her hands, unwrapped the paper carefully. Inside was a dress. Yellow calico with tiny blue flowers. Simple but well made. Size about right. It was Rose's number. Bought it in town when I sent the marriage advertisement. Figured whoever came would need clothes. Ranch life is hard on fancy dresses. She held it up. Good fabric. Practical cut. Meant for work but pretty enough for church. You bought this before you knew who was coming. Yeah. But you didn't give it to me. Didn't seem right. Giving you things meant for someone else, even if that someone was nobody in particular. She folded the dress carefully, rewrapped it. I'll take it now if that's all right. It's yours. They stood there, table between them, late light slanting through the window. She could hear the chickens settling for the night, the wind picking up the distant bawl of cattle. Caleb. Yeah. Thank you. For telling me about Rose. Figured you had a right to know. Living in her house, using her things. It's not her house anymore. He looked around the kitchen. The clean windows, the organized shelves, the table scrubbed to bare wood. Number. Suppose it's not. 3 days later, Emma found herself sitting in the church basement with 12 women, all of them watching her like she was a specimen in a jar. The Ladies' Aid Society meeting. Ruth Blackwood had mentioned it, expecting Emma to decline. Instead, Emma had told Stone she was going. He'd looked surprised, but offered to drive her to town. Now she sat on a hard wooden chair, the yellow dress feeling strange after weeks in work clothes, and listened to Ruth discuss charity baskets for the poor. Of course we must be discerning, Ruth was saying. Some poverty comes from laziness, and we mustn't reward that. But widows and orphans, those are deserving cases. Emma noticed how the other women nodded along, how nobody questioned Ruth's pronouncements. This was her domain, and she ruled it absolutely. Mrs. Stone. Ruth turned to her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Perhaps you could share with us. Where exactly did you come from before arriving in Millerton? Emma felt all eyes turned to her. Back east. How specific? And what did your father do? He farmed. When he worked? The subtle jab landed. Ruth's smile tightened. I see. And your mother took in washing. Among other things. Among other things. Ruth leaned forward. Do tell. She helped birth babies, tended the sick, knew herbs and setting bones. Emma met Ruth's eyes directly. I learned from her. A heavy silence fell. Then Mrs. Henderson, a round woman with kind eyes, spoke up. My daughter Sarah is expecting. Her first. I've been so worried. Emma turned to her. When is she due? February? But she's so small, and her mother. Mrs. Henderson's voice caught. Her mother had trouble with all three of hers. I'd be happy to check on her, make sure everything's progressing well. You would. Mrs. Henderson's relief was palpable. Of course. That's what neighbors do. Ruth's face had gone stiff. Well, how practical. Though of course a real doctor. Doctors are 20 miles away, Emma said. And babies don't wait for convenience. Another woman spoke up. Mrs. Whitfield, my son cut his leg bad last week. It's gone red and hot. I've been putting lard on it, but lard will make it worse. Emma kept her voice even, not judgmental. You need to clean it with carbolic acid if you have it. Or whiskey if you don't. Then keep it dry and wrapped clean. I have whiskey, Mrs. Whitfield said quickly. Will you show me how? After the meeting. Ruth tried to regain control. Ladies, we were discussing charity baskets. But the meeting had shifted. Questions came at Emma from all sides. About croup, about fevers, about a cow that wouldn't let down her milk, about whether it was safe to can tomatoes in these jars or those. Emma answered what she could, admitted what she didn't know, and slowly she felt the room's temperature change. Not warm exactly, but less cold. When the meeting ended, Ruth caught Emma at the door. That was quite the performance. Emma looked at her steadily. I wasn't performing. I was helping. Rose could play the piano. Ruth's voice had gone sharp. She could recite poetry in French. She made this town more civilized just by being in it. And now she's gone. Emma kept her voice gentle but firm. I'm not Rose, won't ever be. But I can help keep babies alive and teach women to tend wounds. If that's not civilized enough for you, I'm sorry. She walked past Ruth to where Lily was waiting by the door. That was brave, Lily whispered. Just honest. Mama's not used to people standing up to her. Maybe she should get used to it. Stone was waiting with the wagon. Saw Mrs. Henderson talking to him, gesturing excitedly. When Emma approached, he gave her a look she couldn't quite read. On the way home, he finally spoke. Heard you offered to help with Sarah Henderson's baby. Word travels fast. Small town. He paused. That's good of you. It's what I know how to do. He nodded. Seems you made an impression. Emma looked out at the passing prairie. I just want to be useful. You are, he said quietly. More than you know. The next morning, Stone rode out to the northern section to check water holes. Emma was alone hanging wash in the late morning sun when she heard a horse approaching. She turned, shading her eyes, expecting maybe Lily or one of the women from the meeting. Instead, Wade Turner sat his horse at the edge of the yard, that red beard catching the light, his eyes moving over her in a way that made her skin crawl. Morning, Mrs. Stone. Caleb, around Emma's hand, moved to the clothespin basket, but she was calculating distances. House was 20 feet away, rifle just inside the door. Caleb was miles north. He's out checking water. Can I give him a message? Wade dismounted slow, tied his horse to the fence post. No message, just being neighborly. Thought I'd stop by, make sure you were settling in all right. He started walking toward her, not threatening exactly, but not respectful of boundaries either. I'm settling fine, Mr. Turner. Thank you for your concern. Call me Wade. He smiled, showing teeth. We're neighbors after all, going to be seeing a lot of each other. Emma stood her ground, though every instinct screamed at her to run. Mr. Turner, if there's nothing specific you need— Oh, I wouldn't say that. He stopped 6 feet away, close enough she could smell tobacco and sweat. You know, Mrs. Stone Rose used to get lonely out here. All day alone while Caleb worked. I'd stop by sometimes, keep her company. Emma's blood went cold. The implication was clear. I imagine that company wasn't welcome. Wade's eyes hardened. Now that's not how I remember it. Rose was always glad to see me, appreciated having someone to talk to, someone who understood how hard it is for a lady out here. I'm sure my husband would be interested to hear about these visits. Oh, Caleb knows I came by, even gave me a talking to about it once. But see, he couldn't be here all the time. And a woman needs— He took another step closer. Protection. Emma's hand was on the clothespin basket, fingers finding the sharp edge of a pin. Step back, Mr. Turner. Or what? He smiled again, uglier this time. You'll tell Caleb. He already knows I'm here. Everybody knows I help out around the neighborhood, help that nobody asked for. Not yet, but you will. He looked around the yard at the house, at the wash flapping in the wind. Things happen on ranches. Accidents, fires, animals getting loose. A woman alone needs someone looking out for her. The threat was clear as daylight. Emma felt fury rise hot and clean, burning through the fear. Let me make something clear, Mr. Turner. She kept her voice steady. I don't need your protection. I don't need your company. And if you set foot on this property again without my husband present, I'll shoot you for trespassing. His face flushed red. Now you listen here. No, you listen. Emma took a step forward instead of back, and the movement surprised him. I'm not Rose. I don't scare easy, and I don't suffer fools. You want to play at being dangerous? I've seen dangerous. You're just a man who likes frightening women because you can't do anything else well. Wade's hand moved to his hip, to the gun there. You're making a mistake. The only mistake would be thinking you're worth the bullet. But if you make me use one, I won't miss. Now get off my property. For a long moment they stood there. Wade's face worked through several emotions, rage, calculation, something that might have been respect. Then he spat in the dirt, turned, and walked back to his horse. Caleb should have kept a tighter rein on his first wife, he said, mounting up. Maybe she'd still be alive. Emma felt the words like a punch. Get out. He rode off slow, making sure she knew he wasn't running. When he was finally gone, Emma's legs started shaking. She sat down hard on the ground right there in the dirt with the wet washing above her and tried to catch her breath. She didn't know how long she sat there before she heard hoofbeats again. But this time it was Stone riding fast, rifle across his saddle. He dismounted before his horse fully stopped. Saw Turner riding away from here. What happened? Emma stood, brushed dirt from her skirt. He came by, said he was being neighborly. Stone's face went hard as granite. What did he say? Emma told him. All of it. About the implied threats. About Rose. About the veiled promise of accidents. As she spoke, she watched Stone's hands clench and unclench on the rifle. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then I'm going to kill him. Number Emma. Number— She put her hand on his arm. That's what he wants. For you to do something that'll get you arrested or worse. He's trying to provoke you. He came onto my property, threatened my wife, and I handled it. Told him if he comes back, I'll shoot him myself. She managed a shaky smile. He seemed to believe me. You should have. Maybe next time. Her attempt at levity fell flat. Stone wasn't smiling. There's something you need to know, he said. About Wade and Rose. You don't have to. No, I do. He looked out at the horizon where Wade had disappeared. I told you Rose died in childbirth. That's true. But there's more. He turned back to her. Wade used to come by when I was working. I didn't know at first. Rose mentioned him once, said he made her uncomfortable. I rode over to his place, told him to stay away. Thought that was the end of it, but it wasn't. Found out later after Rose was gone. Mrs. Henley told me. Wade had been coming by regular. Rose was too scared to tell me, thought I'd get myself killed confronting him. The stress of it, the fear, Mrs. Henley thinks it contributed to the early labor. Stone's voice went flat. So when I said Rose died in childbirth, that's true. But Wade Turner might as well have pulled the trigger himself. Emma felt sick. Why didn't you? Because I couldn't prove it, and I had no energy left for revenge. I was barely keeping myself alive, let alone chasing justice. He looked at her. But that was then. This is now. And I'll be damned if I let him do to you what he did to her. He won't. Emma said it with more confidence than she felt. I'm not Rose, and I won't let fear silence me. Stone studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. But I'm not leaving you alone on the property anymore. Not till we're sure he got the message. That evening, as they sat on the porch after supper, Emma asked the question that had been bothering her. Why does he want this land so bad? It's not better than what he's got. Stone whittled a piece of cedar shavings falling at his feet. It's not about the land. It's about winning. Wade and I, we were friends once, long time ago, before Rose, before he got his first taste of money and decided he deserved everything he saw. What changed? He asked Rose to marry him first, before I even met her. She turned him down, said he scared her even then. When she chose me instead, Wade took it as an insult, like I'd stolen something that was his. So this is about Rose. Stone shook his head. It was about Rose. Now it's just about him not letting go. He can't stand that I have something he can't take. First Rose, now you. Emma watched the sunset paint the sky orange and red. Then we make sure he never does. 2 weeks later, the prairie caught fire again. Emma smelled smoke before she saw it. She was in the garden pulling weeds in the late afternoon heat when the wind shifted and brought the scent of burning grass. She straightened, shaded her eyes, and saw it. Black smoke rising to the south, spreading fast. Stone was at the Henderson Ranch helping repair their barn roof. Wouldn't be back until evening. Emma stood there for a moment making calculations. The fire was miles south, but the wind was blowing north, toward them. It might burn out, might change direction, or it might reach the ranch by nightfall. She made her decision. First the cattle. She ran to the near pasture, opened the gate wide, drove them north toward the water holes Stone had checked. They'd be safe there even if fire came close. Then the chickens. She caught them one by one, cursing the rooster who pecked her hand, and locked them in the reinforced coop closer to the house. The cow was easier, already nervous from the smoke smell. Emma led her to the barn, though that felt wrong. If fire reached the barn, she changed course, tied the cow to a post near the water pump where she could cut her loose fast if needed. Then the house. Emma soaked every cloth she had, draped wet sheets over the windows, filled every bucket, pot, and pan with water. Checked that the rifle was loaded, not for fire, but in case Wade or anyone else decided chaos was a good time for visiting. By the time she finished, the smoke was thicker. The sun had turned red behind it, and the fire was definitely closer. Emma climbed to the roof of the barn, the highest point around, and looked south. What she saw made her stomach drop. A wall of fire 1/2 mile wide, eating through dry grass like a living thing. It would reach them in an hour, maybe 2 if they were lucky. She scrambled down, mind racing. Stone had talked about fire breaks, strips of bare earth that stopped fires from spreading. They had one on the south side, but Emma could see even from here it wasn't wide enough, not for a fire this size. Then she remembered something. A story her uncle had told once about fighting fire in Ohio, about how sometimes the only way to stop a fire was to start one. A backfire. It was dangerous, could easily get out of control, could destroy what she was trying to save. But it might work. Emma grabbed the kerosene can from the barn, filled a bucket, found the striker. Then she walked south past the inadequate fire break to a spot about 100 yards from the house. She poured kerosene in a line east to west as far as the can would take her. Then she grabbed handfuls of dry grass, soaked them in what was left, spaced them along the line. The smoke was thicker now. She could hear the main fire, a sound like wind but steadier, hungrier. Emma struck the match. The grass caught immediately, flames racing along the kerosene line. For a terrible moment she thought she'd made a mistake. The fire she'd started was running away from her toward the house, driven by the same wind that pushed the main fire. Then the wind shifted, just slightly, just enough. Her fire turned, began running south, toward the oncoming wall of flame. Emma ran back to the house, grabbed more water buckets, positioned herself where she could see both fires, her small controlled burn running south, the massive wildfire coming north, and between them, narrowing every second, a strip of unburned grass. She'd never prayed so hard in her life. The two fires met with a sound like thunder. Flames leapt 50 feet high where they collided. For a moment Emma couldn't see anything through the smoke and heat shimmer, couldn't tell if her plan had worked or if she'd just made everything worse. Then the wind cleared the smoke for a moment, and she saw it. The main fire stopped, consuming itself against her backfire, finding nothing but ash and bare earth where her flames had already passed. It worked. Emma sat down hard in the dirt, shaking. Around her the ranch was untouched, house standing, barn solid, cows still tied by the pump eyes rolling but unharmed. Even the chickens were quiet, sensing the danger had passed. She was still sitting there, covered in soot and ash, when she heard horses, multiple horses, men's voices. Stone appeared first, riding like fury itself, rifle in hand. Emma. He was off his horse before it stopped, pulling her to her feet, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? What happened?" "Fire," she managed. "Did a backfire." "You did what?" The other men arrived. Emma recognized some from the previous fire. And Wade Turner, his face black with soot, his eyes on her with something that might have been grudging respect. "Woman did a backfire," Wade said to the others. "Saved the whole place by herself." Stone looked at the burned ground, the line of ash where Emma's fire had run, the untouched ranch behind them, then back at Emma. "You could have died." "But I didn't." She tried to smile. "Ranch is still here." The men worked until full dark, making sure no embers remained to restart the fire. Stone stayed close to Emma, wouldn't let her out of his sight. When the last man finally left Wade among them, Stone turned to her. "Don't ever do that again. Do what saved the ranch, risk yourself like that." He pulled her close, sudden and fierce. "This place isn't worth your life." Emma let herself lean into him for just a moment, felt how he was shaking. "Then you should have come home sooner and done it yourself." He laughed, short and sharp, then kissed the top of her head quick, like he couldn't help himself. "You're going to be the death of me, Emma Stone." It was the first time he'd used her first name, the first time he'd touched her with anything beyond necessity. And standing there in the smoke-stained darkness, Emma realized something had changed between them. The careful distance they'd maintained was gone, burned away as surely as the grass. That night they ate cold food, too tired to cook. Sat on the porch, even though they reeked of smoke and needed baths neither had energy for. "You know what I realized today?" Stone said finally. "What?" "When I saw that smoke and knew you were here alone, I've never been so scared in my life. Not when Rose was dying. Not when the baby—" He stopped. "Nothing scared me like thinking I might lose you." Emma didn't know what to say to that. She'd spent 3 weeks learning his patterns, his preferences, his silences. But this vulnerability was new. "I'm harder to lose than you think," she said finally. "Yeah." He smiled slightly. "I'm starting to see that." They sat in comfortable quiet after that until the stars came out and the last smell of smoke finally cleared from the air. And when they finally went inside, Stone paused at her door. "Lock still works if you want it." Emma looked at him. At this man who'd chosen her when no one else would, who'd protected her honor against Harwick, who'd told her about his dead wife instead of keeping secrets, who'd been terrified she might die today. "I know," she said, but she didn't use it, not that night. And maybe she thought not ever again. "You know, looking back on it now from 70 years' distance, I can tell you that was the night everything truly changed. Not the wedding that would come later, not the papers signed in town. That night when Emma chose not to lock her door, when Caleb accepted that choice without demanding more than she was ready to give. That was when two broken people became one whole thing. That was when arrangement became marriage. That was when survival became living. 3 weeks passed after the fire. 3 weeks where the careful distance between Emma and Stone gradually narrowed like a river cutting through stone. Not all at once, not with drama or declaration, but in small moments that added up to something neither of them had names for yet. Stone's hand would linger on her shoulder when he passed her in the kitchen. Emma would make his favorite foods without being asked, biscuits with extra butter beans, cooked slow with molasses the way he liked. They sat closer on the porch in the evenings, their shoulders nearly touching as the sun went down. The silences between them changed from wary to comfortable to something warmer, charged. One evening Emma was humming while she cooked that same tune from childhood she'd caught herself singing before. This time she didn't stop when she realized. Just let the melody fill the kitchen while she stirred the pot. "What's that song?" Stone asked from where he sat mending a bridle. "Something my mother used to sing." She paused, the memory sharp. Before she decided I was dead to her. Stone set down his work. "Tell me about her." Emma kept stirring, finding it easier to talk when she didn't have to look at him. She was a midwife's apprentice, learned from her mother who learned from hers, knew herbs and bones and how to turn a baby that was positioned wrong. "She taught me everything." "Why'd she turn you away?" "Shame." Emma tasted the beans' added salt. "When Thomas brought me back, it was a public thing. Whole town knew why. That kind of shame, it spreads, infects everything around it. My mother chose her reputation over her daughter. I can't forgive her for it, but I understand it. That's more generous than most would be." Emma finally turned to look at him. "Maybe. Or maybe I just don't want to carry that anger anymore. It's too heavy." Stone stood cross to her, did something he'd never done before. Touched her face, just his fingertips barely there tracing the line of her cheek. "You're stronger than you think. Or maybe I've just had practice at surviving." His hand dropped, but his eyes stayed on hers. "Not the same thing." That night, Stone gave her the yellow dress. Actually gave it, not just offered. "Emma," he said, handing her the wrapped package. "This is yours. No strings, no expectations. Just, I'd like to see you wear something that wasn't for working. Something that's just for being." Emma unwrapped it slowly, ran her fingers over the soft fabric. "It's beautiful. Suits you. You've never seen me wear it." "Don't need to." He smiled, rare and genuine. "Just know it will." The next morning, Emma made a decision about Rose's diary. She'd been avoiding it, that leather journal sitting in her trunk like an unexploded shell. But she couldn't keep hiding from it. She took it to the kitchen stove, opened the firebox. The flames crackled eager. All she had to do was toss it in. Let Rose's words, Rose's dreams, Rose's fears turn to ash and smoke. But standing there with the heat on her face, Emma realized something. Those words weren't just Rose's anymore. They were part of Stone's history, part of what made him the man who'd chosen Emma on that platform. Some ghosts deserved to rest, not to be destroyed, but to be put away with respect. She closed the firebox, took the diary to Stone's room, set it on his dresser where he'd see it. When he came in for noon dinner, he saw it there. Picked it up, looked at Emma with a question in his eyes. "It's yours," she said. "Keep it, burn it, whatever you need, but it's not mine to destroy." He held the diary for a long moment, then set it in the bottom drawer of the dresser, closed it firmly. "Thank you." That afternoon the weather changed. Emma was taking down dry washing when she noticed the light going strange, yellow-green like looking through bottle glass. The birds that usually chattered in the scrub oak had gone silent. Complete unnatural silence. The chickens, usually squabbling and fussing, huddled together in the corner of their coop without her driving them there. In the far pasture she could see the cattle bunching up restless. The temperature dropped. Not gradually, but like someone had opened a door to winter. 15 degrees in as many minutes. Stone came around the corner of the barn, moving fast. Storm coming. Emma looked at the sky. The clouds were building weird, black-green rolling over themselves. Big one, bigger than the fires. He was already moving, checking the barn doors, the fence posts. "Emma, we need to prepare. Now." They worked without talking. Stone-boarded windows while Emma moved anything loose into the barn. The wind started picking up fitful and mean, changing direction every few minutes. By the time they'd secured everything outside, the sky had turned the color of a bruise. "We need to stock the cellar," Stone said, "in case we have to shelter." Emma followed him down the narrow steps into the earth. The cellar was small, 8 by 10 feet, with dirt walls and wooden support beams. It smelled of potatoes and damp earth. Stone had already stored water and lanterns down here after the fire. They worked in the close space, their bodies brushing against each other more than necessary as they arranged supplies. Emma was hyper-aware of him, of his warmth, of how when their hands touched passing a water jug, he didn't pull away immediately. Thunder rolled distant, but deep enough to feel in her chest. "How bad will it be?" Emma asked. Stone looked at her in the dim light. "Bad enough. If it gets worse, we shelter here. Don't argue, don't wait. Just come down." "I won't argue." "Good." His hand found hers in the darkness, squeezed once. "Because I can't lose you, Emma. Don't think I could survive that." Before she could respond, rain started hitting the roof. Not gentle spring rain, but hail. Chunks of ice the size of walnuts hammering down like God's own fury. They scrambled up the cellar steps. Through the window, Emma saw the sky had turned black as midnight, though it was barely evening. And there on the horizon, something that made her blood run cold. A wall of cloud green, black and churning, and from its base a cone. Narrow at first, then widening as it touched the ground, rotating with terrible, deliberate slowness. "Caleb, I see it." His voice was steady, but his hand on her arm was tight. "Cellar. Now. How long do we have? 10 minutes. Maybe less." They grabbed what they could. Blankets roped the rifle, though what good that would do against a tornado Emma didn't know. The hail was bigger now, some pieces large as eggs. One hit Stone's shoulder, and he grunted with pain but kept moving. The cellar door fought them, wind trying to rip it from Stone's hands. Emma threw her weight against it, and together they hauled it open. They practically fell down the steps as the first real gust hit strong enough to make the house above them groan. Stone pulled the door shut, threw the bolt, hung the lantern from the beam. In the yellow light, Emma could see a cut on his forehead, bleeding from where hail had caught him. "Let me see." "It's nothing. Let me see anyway." She cleaned it with water from the bucket, tore a strip from her petticoat to press against it. His hands came up to steady hers, and they stayed like that for a moment, her hands on his face, his hands covering hers. Above them the house began to scream. Wood straining, bending, protesting, nails pulling from beams with high-pitched shrieks, the sound of furniture being thrown, glass shattering like 1,000 bottles breaking at once. "Get down!" Stone pulled Emma to the floor, covered her body with his. His arms locked around her, solid and sure as dirt began raining from between the boards above. The lantern swung wild on its hook, throwing shadows that danced like demons. The whole cellar shook. Emma pressed her face into Stone's shoulder, felt his heart hammering against her cheek, felt his arms tighten around her. Then the roar came. Not wind. Something alive. Something hungry and vast and utterly indifferent to the small lives huddled beneath it. The sound filled everything so loud Emma couldn't hear her own scream, couldn't hear Stone's voice, though she could feel his lips moving against her hair, feel the vibrations of words through his chest. The pressure changed. Her ears felt like they were being pushed inward. She swallowed hard, trying to equalize, but it kept building. Above them, something massive tore away. The tin roof may be peeling off with a shriek that sounded human. The cellar door rattled, held, rattled harder. The bolt was bending. Stone grabbed the rope, looped it around them both, tied it to the support beam. His hands moved fast, efficient, even as the world came apart above them. When he had them secure, his body covered hers again, his weight pressing her into the earth, protecting her with everything he had. The door exploded outward. Gone. Just gone. Torn away like paper. And through the opening, Emma could see it. The tornado directly overhead, a churning throat of wind and debris trying to swallow them whole. She felt the pull, felt her body lifting despite Stone's weight, despite the rope. Felt Stone's arms go iron hard around her, felt him shout something she couldn't hear, felt his absolute refusal to let go. The lantern tore free, shattered against the wall. Perfect darkness. Only sensations now. The roar, the pressure, his breath on her neck, her hands fisted in his shirt, his heart beating against her shoulder, the taste of dirt and fear, the certainty of death hovering just above them. And through it all, one thought clear as a bell. If we die, at least we die together. At least I'll die held. Then, as suddenly as it came, the roar moved on. East. Away. Still there, but distant, chewing through someone else's life. The pressure eased. Emma's ears popped painful and sudden. She could hear again. Stone's ragged breathing. Her own sob caught in her throat. Rain. Normal rain falling into the cellar through the missing door. They lay there for a moment, neither moving. Emma could feel Stone shaking, or maybe that was her, maybe both. "Stay here," he said finally, his voice hoarse. "No." She gripped tighter. "Together or not at all." He pulled back enough to see her face. The dim gray light from above showed his expression fierce and tender all at once. His hand came up, touched her cheek, her forehead checking for injury, or maybe just needing to touch her to confirm she was real and whole and still here. Together then. They untied the rope with clumsy fingers, climbed up into what was left of the world. The devastation was total and specific all at once. Where the kitchen had been, sky showed through. The roof was 90% gone, torn away cleanly. The north wall had collapsed inward. The south wall leaned at an angle that hurt to look at. But the stove, the cast-iron stove, sat unmoved exactly where it had always been. And on the shelf beside it, Rose's china cups still stood now filled with rainwater. The shelf above them had vanished completely. The barn was simply gone. Not damaged, erased. Emma could see the lumber scattered across 200 yards, twisted metal broken boards. In the wreckage, one of the cows stood miraculously unharmed, mooing in bewilderment. The chicken coop had been picked up, carried 30 feet, and set down upside down. From underneath came indignant squawking. Alive! The chickens had survived. Stone laughed. Short, sharp, the sound of sanity barely maintained. Chickens survived, but the barn didn't. Lord works in mysterious ways. Emma saw worse. The lean-to, her room, everything gone. Floor remained, and part of one wall, but that was all. Her carpet bag vanished. The yellow dress Stone had given her disappeared. The bed reduced to splinters. But Stone's room. His bedroom stood intact. Windows broken, but walls, solid roof section still there, bed untouched. "Storm's got its own mind about things," Stone said quietly. "Took your room. Left mine." Emma understood. The tornado had destroyed her past, her separate space, the symbol of their arrangement. But it had preserved his room, their future, where they would be together. Before either could say anything about it, they heard hoofbeats, fast, desperate. Ben Blackwood appeared on a lathered horse, his face white with terror, bleeding from a dozen cuts. "Mr. Stone," the boy could barely speak. "You got to come. Tornado hit us dead on paws, trapped under the house. His legs are pinned. Ma can hear him but can't reach him." Stone was already moving, grabbing tools from what was left of the barn. Shovel, pry bar, rope. "How bad, bad?" "Real bad." Ben's voice broke. "There's blood and he's screaming and Ma doesn't know what to do." Emma spoke up. "I'm coming." Stone turned to her. "No. Too dangerous. Building could collapse further. You need every hand." Emma's voice was steel. "And I know doctoring. If his legs are crushed, you'll need me." Stone looked at her. Really looked. Saw the determination there. The capability. The woman who'd saved the ranch with a backfire. "Can you ride hard? Watch me." They caught 2 horses that had survived, spooked but uninjured. Emma hiked her skirts, swung up bareback, gripped the mane. Stone raised an eyebrow but said nothing, just spurred his horse forward. The ride was nightmare. trees stripped to bare wood, fences erased like they'd never existed, dead cattle scattered like toys, debris everywhere. The tornado had carved a path straight as a ruler through the prairie. On one side, everything green and untouched. On the other, apocalypse. The Blackwood place looked like something from Revelation. The house had been lifted, twisted, and set back down wrong. Walls leaned at 45 degrees. The roof sat in the yard like a discarded hat. The chimney had collapsed into rubble. Ruth Blackwood stood at what used to be the door. Her perfect hair hung wild around her face. Her riding dress was torn and muddy. When she saw them, something broke in her expression. Thank God you're here." From under the wreckage came a sound that turned Emma's stomach. Not quite a scream, not quite a moan, the sound of agony beyond words. Stone was already assessing, walking the wreckage, carefully testing boards. Emma searched for medical supplies, anything that survived. Emma picked through the ruins of the Blackwood kitchen, found the carbolic acid bottle miraculously unbroken, clean cloth that used to be curtains, a sewing kit with needles, whiskey for antiseptic and painkiller. By then 6 neighbors had arrived, drawn by Ben's alarm. They looked to Stone for orders, and Stone looked at Emma. "Show us." Emma took charge without thinking. "We need to shore up the sides first, create a tunnel, pull him out without shifting the main weight." She could feel the men's hesitation. A woman giving orders. But Stone's voice cut through. "You heard her. Do it." Emma directed them like she'd been born to it. Fence posts as braces, smaller boards as tunnel walls, building support around Mr. Blackwood before they dared move him. It took 25 minutes. Every board tested twice. Every brace checked and rechecked. Stone went in first rope around his waist, Emma holding the other end with 3 men. She could hear him talking to Mr. Blackwood, low and calm, working to free the trapped legs. Then Stone's voice, clear and commanding. "Pull! Steady! Now!" They pulled. Mr. Blackwood screamed once, sharp and terrible. Then silence. For a heartbeat, Emma thought they'd lost him. Then Stone emerged backward, dragging Mr. Blackwood by the shoulders. The man's legs were twisted at wrong angles, both clearly shattered below the knee. But he was breathing, unconscious but alive. Ruth dropped to her knees beside her husband. "We need the doctor." "Doctor's 20 miles away," someone said. "His place might be destroyed too." Emma looked at Mr. Blackwood's legs. The left foot pointed backward, the right leg bent where no joint should exist. She'd seen this before, in the mine collapse back home. She knew what happened if bones weren't set quickly. Infection, gangrene, death. "I can set them." The words fell into silence. Every eye turned to her. Ruth grabbed Emma's arm. But you're not a doctor. You're just—" "I've seen it done. I've helped it done." Emma met Ruth's eyes steadily. "Your choice, Mrs. Blackwood. Let me try or wait and hope the doctor survived and can get here in time." Ruth looked at her husband. His face was gray, breathing shallow. She looked back at Emma, and something in her expression crumbled. "Do it. Please. Save him." Emma had Stone cut splints from lumber while she mixed carbolic acid with water. Ben held his father's shoulders. 4 men held Mr. Blackwood's hips and torso, ready to keep him still. Stone positioned himself at Emma's direction, hands ready to pull the bones straight while she guided them. "On 3, Emma said. 1, 2. On 3, she nodded to Stone. He pulled steady and strong. Emma's hands were on Mr. Blackwood's leg, feeling through the swollen flesh for the bones underneath, guiding them back to where God intended. Mr. Blackwood woke screaming. His body arched, fighting. The men held him down. Ruth sobbed, watching her husband's agony. But Emma's hands stayed steady. She'd learned this from her mother, who'd learned it from hers. How to feel bones, how to read bodies, how to help even when it meant causing pain. The left leg went together smoothly, bones sliding into alignment with a click. Emma felt more than heard. She wrapped the splint tight, secure. The right leg fought her. The bones wouldn't align, grinding against each other. Emma realized what she had to do, and her stomach turned. But there was no choice. She broke it again, cleanly. The crack audible across the yard. Ruth screamed. Mr. Blackwood passed out finally. Mercy. Emma worked fast now, adrenaline overriding exhaustion. Realigned, the bones felt them seat properly this time. Wrapped the splint. Tied it secure but not too tight. Poured carbolic acid over the wounds. Bandaged everything. When she finished, she sat back on her heels. Her hands were shaking now, the steadiness gone. Blood covered her hands, her dress, her arms. The sun was setting, painting everything the color of rust and old copper. Will he live? Ruth's voice was small, broken. Emma was honest. Maybe. If infection doesn't set in. If the bones heal straight. If... She paused. A lot of ifs, Mrs. Blackwood. But he has a chance now. Without this, he had none. Ruth grabbed Emma's bloody hands. Tears streamed down her face, cutting tracks through the dirt. I was wrong. What I said before. What I thought. You're not... She couldn't finish. Just held Emma's hands tight. Thank you. Thank you. Emma pulled her hands free gently, uncomfortable with gratitude, with emotion. Anyone would have... Number. Stone's voice cut across. They wouldn't have. He was looking at Emma with something in his eyes she couldn't quite name. Not like an arrangement, not like a helper, like an equal, like a partner, like more. They rode home in twilight horses, picking carefully through debris. Neither spoke. Too much had changed in one day. The storm, the cellar, the way they'd held each other in the darkness, the rescue, the way Stone had looked at her after. The ranch appeared worse in the settling dark. The roofless house, the destroyed barn, Emma's obliterated room, but also life, the chickens complaining, the cow needing milked, work demanding attention despite destruction. We'll sleep in my room, Stone said. Only space left with 4 walls and roof. Emma nodded. No energy left for propriety or careful distance. They were past that now. Had been since the cellar, maybe. Since the backfire. Since that first day on the platform. They worked by lantern light, salvaging what they could. The stove still functioned, cast iron, stubborn as faith. Emma made coffee, fried eggs, toasted bread on the fire. Simple food that tasted like survival. After they ate, the exhaustion hit. 3 weeks of growing tension, 1 day of apocalypse, and now the simple fact of existence weighing down on them both. Stone looked at the doorway to his room, then at Emma. I'll take the floor. No. Emma's voice was firm. We're both exhausted. We're both adults. She paused, then added the words that changed everything. We can share a bed, if you want to. Not without it meaning something, but if you want to. Permission, choice, invitation. Stone looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once. I want to. They prepared for bed behind the battered remains of Rose's painted screen. Emma in her shift, Stone in his union suit. The bed was big enough for distance, but the mattress sagged in the middle, gravity pulling them together. They lay in darkness, listening to rain fall through the broken roof in other parts of the house, listening to each other breathe. Emma. Yeah, in the cellar today. Stone's voice was rough. When I thought we'd die. I realized something. She waited, heart hammering so hard she thought he must hear it. I wrote in Rose's journal about trying again, about being stronger. I know, I saw it. He turned toward her and she felt the bed shift. I thought I meant stronger at being alone, but that wasn't it. What was it then strong enough to choose? His hand found hers in the darkness. Not fall into something because it's easy or expected, but choose it, clear-eyed, knowing the risks, knowing the cost. Emma's breath caught. I'm choosing you, he said, if you'll have me. Not as arrangement, not as convenience, as wife, true wife, as the person I want to wake up next to, the person I want to build with, the person I... His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Love. The word hung in the darkness like a star. Emma thought about standing on that platform, about being laughed at, rejected, left for last, about this man stepping forward when no one else would, about 3 weeks of learning each other in silence and work, about today holding each other while the world ended above them. I'm not Rose, she said finally. I'll never be delicate or refined. I can't give you children. I can't play piano or speak French. All I have is work and loyalty and—" Her voice broke. "And love, if that's enough." Stone pulled her close, slow enough she could stop him if she wanted. She didn't want to stop. His arms came around her solid and warm, and she fit against him like they'd been made to match. "Thank God you're not Rose," he said into her hair. "I don't want delicate. I want strong. I don't want children. I want partner. I don't want piano. I want the woman who stood tall when the world laughed, who saved a ranch with a backfire, who saved a man's life with nothing but guts and memory. I want you." He kissed her then. Gentle at first, a question. She answered by pulling him closer, by opening her mouth to his, by showing him without words that this was what she wanted too. What she'd maybe wanted since that first day, but hadn't dared admit. The kiss deepened. His hands moved up her back, careful but sure. Hers found the strong plane of his shoulders, the warm skin of his neck. They'd been moving toward this for weeks, like two rivers joining, and now that they'd met, there was no going back to separate streams. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he touched her face, traced her cheekbone, her jaw, her lips, like learning her by feel. "We'll rebuild," he said. "Everything. The house, the barn, all of it. But different this time. How we want it. Together." Together. Emma agreed. They settled into each other, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. Outside, the wind blew through the broken house. Coyotes called to each other across the empty prairie. But inside this room, in this bed, two people who'd expected nothing found everything. Morning came too soon, and not soon enough. Emma woke wrapped in Stone's arms, his breath warm on her neck, and smiled. First time in years she'd woken happy. Ready to rebuild, he asked, voice rough with sleep. She looked out the broken window at the wreckage awaiting them, looked back at him, at this man who'd become her husband in truth, now not just name. Ready. 6 months later, on a spring morning when the prairie was green and new, Emma stood in the rebuilt kitchen and watched Ruth Blackwood approach the house. But this time Ruth's face was open, friendly. Behind her, Lily rode alongside, chattering happily about her upcoming wedding to Ben. The house was different now, rebuilt with help from every ranch in the county, walls straight and true, a new tin roof that gleamed in the sun, windows with real glass, and the lean-to rebuilt as a sewing room, not a separate bedroom. Because Emma slept in Stone's room now, their room. The barn stood solid, maybe even better than before. The chicken coop was reinforced, the chickens fat and productive. The garden thrived, proving the soil wasn't played out after all. Just needed someone who knew how to work it. Ruth dismounted, tied her horse. Emma noticed she moved different now, less rigid, more human. Henry Blackwood's legs had healed crooked but functional. He walked with 2 canes, but he walked. And Ruth had never forgotten who'd made that possible. Mrs. Stone. Ruth said warmly, "I hope we're not interrupting." "Not at all." Emma wiped her hands on her apron. "Coffee's fresh." Over coffee, Ruth brought news. Henry was walking better each day. The spring planting was going well. Ben and Lily would marry next month, would Emma come, and oh, Mrs. Henderson's daughter had delivered a healthy boy, thanks to Emma's help through the difficult pregnancy. Wade Turner had left the county. Moved to Colorado, folks said, though some whispered it wasn't entirely his choice. The day after Emma saved Henry Blackwood's life, Caleb had ridden to Wade's ranch. What was said between them, nobody knew for certain. But Caleb came back with scraped knuckles, and Wade's ranch went up for sale within the week. Some battles weren't worth fighting, Wade had finally learned, especially against a man who'd lost everything once and refused to lose anything again. Especially against a woman who'd faced down fire tornado and the whole town's scorn without breaking. Wade Turner, for all his bluster and threat, had met his match. And like most bullies, when finally confronted, he'd simply left. After Ruth and Lily left, Stone came in from the north pasture. 6 months of rebuilding, of good food and happiness had filled him out. He smiled more now, even laughed sometimes. The hard edges had softened without losing the strength underneath. "You know what today is?" he asked, pulling Emma close. "What's 6 months since I chose you at that depot?" Emma leaned into him. This man who'd become her world. Best choice you ever made. Only choice that mattered. He kissed her forehead. Only choice I'd make again. Every time. Emma looked around the kitchen, at the clean walls, the full shelves, the windows that let in light, at Stone's arms around her and the life they'd built from wreckage. "You know what I learned," she said. "What, sometimes the one left last is actually the one who was right all along, not because they're perfect, but because they're strong enough to stand when no one believes in them, and wise enough to recognize when they're truly loved." Stone pulled back to look at her face. "That's the truth." He smiled. "Rose wanted me to find someone stronger. Took me 3 years to understand what she meant. But I found her. Found you." Outside, spring birds sang in the oak trees. The cattle grazed peacefully in green pastures. The chickens scratched and clucked in their reinforced coop. Inside, 2 people who'd been broken separately had become whole together. Emma thought back to that September afternoon standing on the platform while the world laughed. Thought about the boots on wood, the steady approach the man who'd looked at her bleeding palms and seen strength instead of weakness. Sometimes the best love stories don't start with perfection. They start with 2 people choosing to build something beautiful from the wreckage of their separate disasters. Choosing to stand together when the world says stand alone. Choosing to love when love seems impossible. Emma had come to Millerton as the woman no one wanted. Rejected, ridiculed, considered broken beyond repair. But she'd left that woman on the platform the day Caleb Stone reached out his hand. Now she was Emma Stone, wife, healer, rancher, the woman who saved Henry Blackwood, the woman who fought fire with fire, the woman strong enough to survive tornado and rejection and shame, strong enough to love again. And standing in the kitchen, she'd helped rebuild, wrapped in the arms of the man who'd chosen her when she was last and alone. Emma finally understood what her mother had tried to teach her all those years ago. Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about what you build after you've been broken. And sometimes the person left behind is left behind for a reason, because they're meant for something better. Someone better. A love that's earned, not given lightly. The sun set over the Texas prairie, painting the sky gold and amber. In the rebuilt house, Caleb and Emma Stone sat down to supper, just like they would tomorrow and the next day and all the days after. 2 people who'd learned that sometimes being chosen last means you were exactly right all along. And Emma never looked back. "You know what I learned living alongside Caleb and building our life over those next 40 years? The strongest fences aren't built alone. Neither are the strongest people." That depot platform in 1882 where Emma stood as the last woman nobody wanted. That wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning. Because sometimes the Lord doesn't give us what we ask for. He gives us what we need when we're finally ready to receive it. Caleb needed someone who wouldn't break under the weight of Rose's ghost. Emma needed someone who saw strength where everyone else saw failure. And Millerton. Well, we needed someone to remind us that worth isn't measured in children born or pianos played, but in lives saved, and fires fought, and standing tall when the whole world says, lie down. I've been watching people make choices for 70 years now, and I can tell you this, the moments that truly matter don't announce themselves with fanfare. They creep up quiet like on an ordinary Tuesday when a man looks at a woman's bleeding palms and sees not weakness, but the kind of strength that survives when everything else fails. Emma Grace Stone lived to be 83, delivered over 200 babies in Millerton County, taught 3 generations of women how to set bones and tend wounds and stand up straight when society said, bow down. And every single day of those 55 years, she woke up next to the man who'd chosen her when she was last. That's what I call a love story. That's what I call being exactly right all along.